The mahogany conference table gleamed under soft recessed lighting. 15 seats, all occupied except one. Mine. I was standing, watching faces I'd known for 15 years try to hide their satisfaction behind masks of corporate concern. Please understand, Sarah, James Whitman, our newly appointed CEO, said with practiced sympathy. This isn't personal. The board has voted. We're moving in a new direction. I looked at each of them in turn. Miranda from finance, who'd started as my intern. Peter from operations, who'd called me at 3 a.m. countless times to solve critical system failures. And Thomas, my oldest friend on the board, who suddenly found his Mont Blanc pen fascinating. At 45, I'd spent a third of my life building Nexus Technologies from a struggling startup into a $2.8 billion company. But they'd forgotten that, or maybe they'd chosen to forget. Times change, James continued, adjusting his Rolex, a gift from his father, who'd bought his way onto the board 6 months ago. We need fresh perspectives, new energy. What they meant was they needed someone more manageable. Someone who wouldn't question their aggressive growth strategies or their ethical shortcuts. Someone not like me. The severance package is generous, Miranda added, sliding a thick folder across the table. 6 months' salary, full benefits continuation, and a non-compete clause. I picked up the folder without opening it. When would this be effective? Immediately, James said, barely containing his smirk. We'll announce the transition this afternoon. 15 years of dedication, of missed birthdays and canceled vacations, of solving problems they hadn't even known existed, reduced to an afternoon announcement. I see, I said quietly, reaching for my laptop bag. May I make one suggestion before I leave? James waved his hand magnanimously. Of course, you've earned that much. I pulled out my laptop, opened it slowly, and typed in my password. The familiar blue glow illuminated my face as I turned it toward them. You might want to look at this first. The United States Patent and Trademark Office website filled the screen. Specifically, the page showing Patent No. US 9,847,621 B2. The core technology that powered every product Nexus had released in the last decade. What about it? Thomas asked, finally looking up from his pen. We all know about the company's patents. Look at the assignee, I said softly. James leaned forward, squinting at the screen. His face went from confident to confused to pale in the span of 3 seconds. Because there, in clear black and white, was my name. Not Nexus Technologies. Not the company's holding corporation. My name. This must be a mistake, Miranda stammered. I pulled up another document, then another, and another. 7 patents in total, all fundamental to Nexus's operations, all registered under my personal ownership. When I joined Nexus, I explained calmly, it was failing. The original technology was flawed. I rebuilt it from scratch, working nights, weekends, holidays. The company was too broke to file patents, so I paid for them myself. Filed them in my name. But that's company property, James sputtered. No, I corrected him. It's my property. Licensed to Nexus through an agreement that requires my continued involvement in operations. Page 6, paragraph 4 of my original contract. The one your father's lawyers apparently didn't read carefully enough. The room had gone completely silent. Even the usual hum of the air conditioning seemed muted. That agreement expires, I continued, checking my watch. approximately 45 minutes after my termination becomes effective. Peter, always the quickest with numbers, spoke first. Without those patents, Nexus can't legally produce or sell any of its current products. I finished for him. Not the security software, not the encryption tools, not even the client management system. James's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. You're bluffing. The shareholders will be very interested to learn that the board just invalidated the company's right to use its core technology, I said, closing my laptop. I imagine the stock price reaction will be dramatic. Miranda was already on her phone, frantically texting what I assumed was the legal department. Too late. You planned this, Thomas said quietly. You knew they were going to push you out. I thought about the whispered conversations I'd overheard, the subtle shifts in meeting schedules, the way James had started excluding me from key decisions. I've survived 3 hostile takeover attempts, 2 market crashes, and countless corporate power plays. I replied. Did you really think I wouldn't see this coming? I stood, smoothing my blazer. Now, we have 2 options. 1, you can proceed with my termination, and I'll begin licensing discussions with your competitors tomorrow morning. I believe Microsoft has already expressed interest. Or, James croaked, or we can call an emergency board meeting. Right now, to discuss a restructuring that better serves everyone's interests. You're blackmailing us, Miranda accused. No, I corrected her. I'm protecting what I built, what I earned. What you all seem to forget was mine. I walked to the door, then turned back. You have 30 minutes to decide. I'll be in my office, doing what I've done for 15 years, keeping this company running while others play politics. As I left the boardroom, I heard the panic begin to rise behind me. Phones being grabbed, urgent whispers, the rustle of papers being frantically reviewed. I smiled faintly as I walked to my office. They thought they were ending my career. Instead, they just discovered who really held the power all along. And this was just the beginning. 28 minutes later, my office door burst open. James stood there, his perfectly tailored suit now slightly rumpled, his confident smirk replaced by barely controlled panic. The lawyers confirmed it, he said, his voice hoarse. All 7 patents. The licensing agreements. Everything. I didn't look up from my computer screen. And the board is reconvening. Now. He swallowed hard. Please. I took my time shutting down my laptop, gathering my files. Power isn't just about having leverage. It's about knowing how to use it. The boardroom had transformed in my absence. Gone was the smug satisfaction, replaced by tense faces and nervous energy. Legal documents were scattered across the mahogany table. 3 lawyers hovered in the corner, looking grim. Let's clarify the situation, I said, taking my seat. Without a valid license for my patents, Nexus cannot legally operate its core business. Our stock will collapse, our clients will flee, and our competitors will be circling within hours. Miranda dabbed at her forehead with a tissue. What do you want? I opened my briefcase and pulled out a document I'd prepared months ago when I'd first noticed James's father buying up board seats. Full control of technology operations, a seat on the executive committee, and 51% of voting shares. That's outrageous. James exploded. You can't demand control of the company. I'm not demanding it, I replied calmly. I'm formalizing what's already true. This company runs on my technology. It survives by my innovation. It's time the ownership structure reflected that reality. Thomas leaned forward. And if we refuse? I pulled out my phone, opened my emails. Then I send this press release to the Wall Street Journal. Nexus Technologies loses rights to core patents. I imagine our stock will drop 60% before trading is halted. Peter, ever the pragmatist, spoke up. She's right. Without those patents, we're worthless. Our clients will break contracts by close of business. James slumped in his chair. My father will never agree to this. Your father, I said sharply, bought his way onto this board 6 months ago. I built this company's foundation 15 years ago. Call him if you want. But do it quickly. We have. I checked my watch. 17 minutes until the markets close. The next hour was a blur of legal discussions, frantic calls, and hasty document revisions. James's father tried to fight it, threatening lawsuits and regulatory investigations. But even he fell silent when his lawyers explained the implications of losing patent rights. By 6 p.m., it was done. The papers were signed. The press release was revised to announce my appointment as Executive Chairwoman and Chief Technology Officer. The stock actually went up 2 points on the news. As the board members filed out, shoulders slumped in defeat. Thomas lingered behind. You could have told me, he said quietly. We were friends. Were we? I asked. You knew what they were planning. You said nothing. He had the grace to look ashamed. I didn't think you fight back. You always seemed so accommodating. I smiled. That was your first mistake, confusing patience for weakness. And the second? Forgetting who really built this company. I gathered my things, ready to head to my new office, the CEO's corner suite. I'll see you at tomorrow's executive committee meeting. Don't be late. As I walked through the building that evening, employees stopped to stare. News had spread fast. The quiet tech genius who'd been about to be ousted was now their boss. My phone buzzed constantly. Journalists seeking comments, competitors testing waters, old colleagues offering congratulations. I ignored them all except one message from my mentor, Dr. Helen Chen, who taught me my first coding class 20 years ago. Remember, true power isn't in the patents. It's in making something they can't live without. I smiled, thinking of all the nights I'd spent writing code while others attended cocktail parties. The weekends debugging systems while they played golf. The years of being underestimated while I quietly secured my position. In my new office, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker on. The view was different from up here, clearer, like finally seeing the whole board in a chess game you've been playing all along. My assistant, formerly James's, appeared at the door. Mr. Whitman's personal items have been removed from the office, and the executive team is requesting a meeting first thing tomorrow. Schedule it for 10 a.m., I replied. And Sarah? Have facilities changed the access codes to the R&D labs, effective immediately. She nodded and disappeared. I sat down at my new desk, opened my laptop, and began reviewing the projects James had approved in recent months. Each one a potential mistake I'd have to fix. Each one a reminder of why I'd needed to take control. The night stretched ahead, full of work to be done. But for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't building someone else's dream. I was protecting my own. The next morning, I arrived at 7 a.m. to find the executive floor already buzzing with nervous energy. Change ripples through a company like electricity, and everyone was waiting to see where the new current would flow. My new executive assistant, Sarah, met me at the elevator. The team's quarterly reports are on your desk, and James's father is in the lobby, demanding to see you. Is he? I smiled slightly. Let him wait. We have more important matters to handle. In my office, still being redecorated from James's leather and Trome aesthetic to something more practical, I reviewed the reports I'd been deliberately kept away from for months. The picture they painted was worse than I'd expected. Under James's leadership, Nexus had started cutting corners. R&D budgets slashed, quality control reduced, client concerns ignored, all to boost short-term profits and justify his excessive compensation package. At 9:58 a.m., the executive team filed into the conference room. 8 people who'd previously reported to James, now shifting uncomfortably under my gaze. "Let's begin with a simple truth," I said, standing at the head of the table. "This company has lost its way." I projected their quarterly reports onto the screen. Quality control failures up 40%. Client satisfaction at a 5-year low. 3 major security vulnerabilities in our latest release. Vulnerabilities that were flagged and ignored. Marcus, our head of sales, cleared his throat. "The market demands rapid releases." "The market," I cut him off, "demands reliability. Something we used to understand." I switched to another slide, an internal email, where Marcus had dismissed a client's security concerns as paranoid overthinking. That client, by the way, was the Department of Defense. They're reviewing all their contracts with us. Anyone want to guess how much revenue we'll lose if they walk? Silence fell over the room. "Here's how things will work going forward," I continued. "Every decision that affects our technology goes through me. Every shortcut ends now. Every client complaint gets addressed, not dismissed." I handed out new organizational charts. Several positions had been eliminated or restructured. Those who can't adapt to these changes should submit their resignations by end of day. Severance will be fair, but non-negotiable. Lisa, our HR director, raised her hand tentatively. "And those who stay? Will help rebuild what we've lost. Our reputation, our standards, our integrity." The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, 3 executives had resigned. The remaining 5 looked shell-shocked but determined. Afterward, I finally allowed James's father, William Whitman, to be shown up to my office. "You think you've won," he spat, not bothering with pleasantries. "But you've made powerful enemies." I kept working on my laptop, not looking up. "Your son nearly destroyed 15 years of my work in 6 months. The only reason you're still allowed in this building is because I respect what this company means to its employees and clients." "I'll fight this," he threatened. "I have resources." "You have nothing," I interrupted, finally meeting his gaze. "Your resources come from investments that depend on market confidence. Would you like to see what happens to your portfolio?" When I announced that Nexus's former leadership compromised national security contracts, his face paled. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." I stood up. "You bought your way onto my board, installed your son to stroke his ego, nearly wrecked something I spent my life building. So yes, William, I would dare." He left without another word. By evening, his resignation from the board had been delivered. Over the next few weeks, Nexus transformed. We recalled faulty products, rebuilt client trust, reinstated quality standards. It was expensive, painful, and absolutely necessary. I hired young engineers who reminded me of myself 15 years ago. Brilliant, dedicated, more interested in solving problems than playing politics. We established an innovation lab where developers could experiment without fear of failure. 3 months after the boardroom coup, I received an email from Thomas, my former friend who'd chosen the wrong side. You were right about everything. The company is stronger now than ever. I should have stood by you." I replied with a quote from our first business plan, written on a coffee-stained napkin 15 years ago. "Technology without integrity is just expensive failure waiting to happen." 6 months in, our stock had hit an all-time high. Not because we were cutting corners, but because we weren't. Clients returned, attracted by our renewed commitment to excellence. The Department of Defense not only kept their contracts but expanded them. 1 year to the day after they tried to force me out, I stood in the same boardroom, addressing a very different board. People chosen for expertise, not connections. Leaders who understood that innovation requires both freedom and responsibility. A year ago, I told them this company forgot its foundation. Forgot that technology isn't just about code and patents. It's about trust, about building something that lasts. I looked around the table, seeing nods of understanding. We lost our way once. We won't lose it again. That evening, as I worked late in my office, Sarah brought in a special delivery, a frame containing my first patent certificate. I hung it on the wall, a reminder of where everything started. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chen. "Saw your company's latest innovation awards. Well done. Still making things they can't live without." I smiled, looking out at the city lights. "No," I typed back. "Making things worth living up to." Because in the end, that's what it was all about. Not the patents that gave me power, but the principles they protected. Not the control I'd gained, but the legacy I was building. A legacy of innovation with integrity, of power used responsibly, of quiet strength that didn't need to shout to be heard. Let them underestimate the quiet ones, I thought. We're the ones who build the foundations they stand on. And when those foundations shake, they remember who really holds the power. Not in patents or positions, but in the simple, undeniable truth that some things can't be bought or stolen. They have to be earned.